Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming out. Today we're going to talk about fall protection and fall safety. Fall safety is very important in the United States, and one of the foremost importance of OSHA's regulations. Some of the number one death-related incidents are related to fall safety and injuries due to heights at falls. OSHA states that if any time an employee is working at a level and facing a fall potential of 6 feet or more, they must use fall protection of some sort. Any employer shall provide and install all fall protection systems required by this subpart for an employee, and shall comply with all other pertinent requirements of this subpart before that employee begins the work that necessitates the fall protection. In other words, use appropriate gear for the appropriate situation in the job that you're doing. Now, one of the most important differences to note here is the difference between fall restraint and fall arrest. Okay? Fall restraint means that it is constantly keeping you from falling. That is the system that you are relying with your body weight all the time. If you are free hanging off of a surface 6 feet or higher, you're going to have a fall restraint system that is constantly holding your weight. Right? It's going to be comprised of at least the harness, an anchor, and some sort of extension. And fall arrest, on the other hand, is what you set up as a system that is going to catch you were something to fail. Were your fall restraint system to fail, or were you to fall off of a working surface, and the fall arrest is going to catch you. It's going to be a one-time emergency use only. You don't want to fall on your fall arrest.
So, like, you use your fall arrest only when your fall restraint fails. So, like, if your fall restraint fails, that's really bad, but if your fall arrest fails, you're pretty much dead.
Yes, exactly. So, fall restraint may sometimes just be like a scaffold or a platform that you're working off of that is safe and capable of holding your weight. And then you still need a fall arrest system, say were you to fall out of that chair or platform or to slip off of the working site. Much of the fall arrest equipment is going to be designed to absorb impact, and after it is used once will need to be replaced because it won't be able to do that job again. Now, so some things are used, some equipment is used for fall restraint and some is used for fall arrest, and some are pertinent for both. So let's get into knowing exactly what gear and how to use it is extremely important to the safety of this type of job and fall restraint. So the first foremost important piece of gear, and is the piece of gear that started any sort of fall arrest system, is the harness. So to understand a little bit of history of fall restraint and arrest, let's know where it all started. We've all seen pictures back in the 1920s and 30s when OSHA wasn't around. We had no regulations of steel workers working at 30 stories on steel beams with no sort of equipment. They're just sitting there hanging, no harness, no lifeline or anything, and that was dangerous. There used to be a lot of deaths that way. You'd be lucky if your employer posted a sign that said "Watch your step," or there was a safety officer to say. There were no safety officers. You'd be lucky if a manager was like, "Hey, you're doing some kind of dangerous. You need to stop doing that." They didn't care. There were no regulations. There were no fines if they weren't following and abiding by certain regulations and maintaining a safe environment for their employees. So it just didn't matter. And with the primitive design of much fall restraint systems, the employees didn't want to use it. They felt it was too cumbersome and slowed them down. So, but with the harness, this was the first thing that really started to make any kind of fall safety possible. Now, given over the years, as technology has advanced with all of this equipment, things have become more effective, more lightweight, and more comfortable. Here I have a little bit of a more old school, full body OSHA standard harness This was probably made in the late 80s or early 90s. We've upgraded things a lot since then, but this is your basic ring here for your fall arrest system. This is going to sit on your back right above the spine of your neck. You put it on kind of like this. And see, your fall arrest is right here, to where when you fall and the impact is absorbed, your body will kind of absorb impact this way, long ways, and it won't give you a spinal injury as likely as if it's connected at your hip. If you fall and it catches you around your waist, then your body will flex, and it's often that you'll get spine injuries, which is the problem with body belts, and was why OSHA doesn't allow body belts anymore. It has to be a harness. But basically buckles here and across the chest, the waist and the chest, and then you have the leg straps come up around the leg, the buckle. Now, as you can see, these straps don't have a whole lot of cushion to them. If you fall on this, it's not going to be very comfortable if you have to hang there for 3 or 4 hours while you're waiting on the fire department to come rescue you, or one of your co-workers to get to you and try to do some kind of rescue technique. This is going to dig into your legs and cut off circulation. People have actually lost legs before because they've had to hang in their harness for so long that they didn't have circulation to their legs, and
is this like
their legs died.
In an industrial environment that someone could hang for hours?
Yeah, if you're working on especially if you have a small team, and you're working on a high rise on your own, you may be in a position where someone else can't get to you at the same time, where you're at. And the thing is, if you fall off of a platform or out of a chair or something, then you could be hanging 6 feet below where you're at and incapable of self-rescue and climbing back up. And it's going to be very difficult for someone to get the right equipment, drop a rope next to you, and get down there to rescue, and it could be hours. There have been incidences where people weren't keeping proper communication and working in large enough teams, and nobody knew that they were there, before we had cell phones and such. So, here I have more of a modern harness. This is just a waist harness. It doesn't have the upper body part. But you can see these straps have a lot more cushion now, and they're built a lot nicer to where you can sit in them for longer, and it's not going to cut off circulation. It's a lot wider leg strap with softer cushion and better ergonomically designed. Here's a cheaper version of the same thing. You don't want to hang in this for very long. These straps are almost like seat belt straps. That's going to cut off circulation real quick. And so, but here on the PowerPoint slide, you can see more modern. This is a Petzl. It's a really good harness. This is a full body harness with really wide leg straps, really wide back strap and shoulder straps. You can see it's really well cushioned and very well designed to fit your body and for you to be able to rest for hours. A lot of them even have an attachable thing. It's probably up here around the back. You can't really see it in this picture, but it's a thing you can unsnap and it'll fall down below you, so you can rest. You can sit down instead of having. You can actually have a seat underneath your butt, so you can hang in them for hours. And nowadays they've got so many harnesses that it's you can find a harness specific to whatever job you're doing. They have harnesses specifically for tower climbers. They have harnesses specifically for steel workers or high-rise workers or tree climbers. So the harness is the most essential, basic piece of equipment, and the rest of your fall safety gear builds from there. You want to get a good harness, especially if you're going to sit in it for a while. This is what we call a controlled descent device. Now, it's basically a fancy, way upgraded version of an old school rappel device. According to OSHA regulations, you cannot actually rappel. They call it controlled descent, because the idea of rappelling Generally, you push off the wall and free flow a little bit, and you rappel a lot faster. It puts a lot of strain on the anchor and on any other surface that your system is coming across and the rest of your system. So according to OSHA regulations, you shouldn't rappel, you should have a controlled descent. This is a really fancy device that makes that really easy. It automatically controls the descent rate of the operator. So how it automatically allows you to drop at the same speed the entire time. And it makes it really easy to control. This right here is a more of an old school, it's called a rack. It works for your positioning, especially if you're rappelling, working on buildings a lot. If you have to anchor at the top of the building and drop down the building and work on your way down, it doubles as a rappel device and to be able to lock yourself off easily. And it's made of, this one's made of steel bars. Actually, it's got aluminum on it too. You can get them aluminum or steel. Basically, just squeeze it and the bars fall off really easy. And you weave the rope in and out of these bars. You just snap it around the rope so it comes through it like this. And creates friction coming to the bars. The more bars you have, the slower you'll descend. And the thickness of your rope has a lot to do with that too. So, this type is very common on building work, working on construction on already existing high-rises. Another important piece of equipment, possibly the next most important, is your rope. Now, rope has definitely progressed over the 1,000+ years we've been making rope. According to OSHA regulations now, anything you use in your fall safety equipment, rope, lanyards, extensions, your harness must all be made of synthetic fibers, no natural fibers. And we used to make rope out of natural plant fibers. And to make a rope of the strength that this width is, you'd have to have probably 3 or 4 inches in diameter. So there are two main differences between rope types. So you have static lines and dynamic lines. Static lines are already stretched their full potential. They will not stretch out. They're tightly woven and will not give. It's a lot more rigid if you fall on a static line. And you may, it very much varies depending on what kind of work you're doing and exactly what you're trying to achieve. But you may want a static line for your fall restraint that you always have your weight on, and you may want a dynamic line for your fall arrest. You definitely want some dynamic line for your fall arrest. And this here is a dynamic rope. It's a lot more stretchy than the static line. You can see this little section stretches just a little bit. So it absorbs impact and force when imparted on it. If you had this whole 200-foot rope stretched out all the way down a vertical stretch, then it would probably, you put your body weight on it, it would stretch 6 to 8 feet. So much better for a fall restraint system. It's also a little bit more cushiony for your fall. And it's good for fall arrest and a lot more cushiony for your fall restraint too. Like I said, it depends on what you're doing. And this is a pretty new rope. You can see how good we've gotten with technology. This thing is like 9 millimeters or something. It's really thin. And this is enough to hold your body weight all day. It's actually, I mean, if you're going to work all day, you might want something a little bit more heavy duty, but this is rated as a single or a double rope. That's another way that ropes are classified, as in use of single or double. If it's single, it means it stands alone and you don't need another rope to accommodate it. But if it's double, then it's meant to be used in conjunction with another rope exactly like it, a twin, which can be handy in some situations to use 2 ropes. If there's a bad fall swing potential, then 2 ropes can minimize your swing when you fall on your arrest system. So, now another very important piece of equipment, and also very old, started with mountaineering, are carabiners. So we have carabiners now come in all shapes, sizes, colors, and load ratings and types. This is a pretty old standard type right here. It's just an oval, just a steel oval with a locking, and not a locking gate or anything. It's just a spring-loaded gate. It'll snap back into place. Every carabiner will have its load rating printed on it somewhere. It will tell you the force it can take pulling this way, the force it can take pulling this way, and the force that it would take to bend the gate backwards. So you can see it written on there if you want to take a look. As I said, they come in all types. This is a wire gate carabiner. It saves a little bit of weight on the gate, but not quite as heavy duty. Your load rating on the gate is going to be a little bit lower. And we have various types of locking carabiners. This is a really fancy new one right here. And you got this little thing you screw up and it locks into place so the gate can't open. This one's real nice and smooth and quiet. This is a little bit older, bigger one. Does the same thing. And here is a bit more old school one. This is a really solid steel and it's got this nice big thing here. These are kind of a little bit more of a pain to work with. So this is kind of another type too. This is on this is what we call a lanyard, and this is a essential part of your fall arrest system right here too. It's made to stretch as you fall on it so that it will absorb the force imparted on your body. Now, ascender. Here we have an ascender, which is comprised of this pin that holds a piece of gear and a little horseshoe shaped thing here. It's called an ascender because originally that's what it was designed for. It was ascending. You could ascend up 2 ropes having 2 of these. You can kind of slide one up and it'll lock off and you put your weight on it and take your weight off the opposite one and slide it up and shift your weight to it, and you can constantly move up 2 ropes like that. But most of the time nowadays in the industry it's used as a fall arrest tool. Let me show you how it works a little bit here. You place the rope down through this horseshoe type thing and put the gear in, pressing up against it here. You can see the teeth on the gear and how it binds on the rope, and then you slide the pin and lock it into place. Now if you want to position it, it will move up the rope freely, but sometimes it will move down too. It'll kind of move around freely, but you connect your lanyard to this hoop right there, and it really won't fall down because the weight. Anytime weight is put on this, it will lock into place on the rope and it will not be able to come down. So when you can move it around freely. You just push this in and slide it down the rope as you're rappelling down. A lot of times if you're working on a tall building on a high rise, you would drop 2 ropes and you'd have one for your fall restraint and one for your fall arrest. And so you would use this for your fall arrest system in case you fell off, and it would bind on the rope. So that's how an ascender works. Now, important part of your fall restraint is your positioning device system. You can kind of see that real well here in this picture. Your positioning is your fall restraint. It's basically what you're going to use to put yourself exactly where you want to work at. You want to think very closely about where to put it and hang yourself right in front of your work. And it allows for you to do that very easily. You're going to hang on it all the time. You can see it stretched up from his harness here and how his weight's on it. And this is actually part of his fall arrest system where it has no tension on it at all. We'll see a better picture of that in a second. So, positioning lanyard is part of that. You can see that in the picture. So this is a safety climb rope grab. What this does is, much like this ascender works, the way I was saying, when you fall out it will grab onto the rope. You put it through a rope or a cable and it will put downward force on it. These are mainly used just for lifelines. Now a lifeline you'll find often on cell phone towers and stuff. They have vertical and horizontal. It's a steel cable that runs up the length of the tower, across the length of the work site on top, and you put this on it and it will allow you to freely move around and freely go up and down on that safety line. But if you fall, the force on this lever will cause the device to lock off onto the cable and you won't be able to go anywhere. It'll stop you. This is a Y lanyard that you'd use in fall arrest. It's much like this one, but there's two pieces that come out so you can position it in two different places and minimize swing potential and that sort of thing. It's designed to stretch so it's shock absorbing. And you want it'll allow most of the force in your fall arrest system to be absorbed inside of your body. It's a self-retracting lanyard. That works in a way that when you fall onto your fall arrest system, it will gradually feed out and it will impart force into this lanyard. And there's a cable reeled up in this part of the device right here that will bleed force from your fall as it extends out, and will eventually, when it reaches the end, it will lock into place. And very effective. So here's a picture you can see better his fall arrest system and his lanyard here, his shock absorbing lanyard. You can see where he's rested on his fall restraint system, but which is going to his front here in front of his hip, but his fall restraint is going to his backside. So that if his arrest is going to his backside, so if his restraint system failed, this would catch him. And he's probably thought out pretty well about where this would swing in, and it's probably wide open over here on the tower. So, some OSHA regulations. Fall arrest systems consist of anchorage, connectors, body harness, and may include deceleration device, suitable combinations, lifeline. We went over all that. Limit maximum arresting force on employee to 1,800 pounds when used with a body harness. Let's do that. Must be rigged so that an employee may not fall more than 6 feet or to the lower level, whichever one is less. It must bring an employee to a complete stop and limit maximum deceleration distance to 3.5 feet. And they must have sufficient strength to withstand twice the force potential of the person using the system were they to fall, and the distance that it will allow. There's some more regulations on the equipment. It must be forged steel or pressed. Lanyards and lifelines must have certain braking strength. Must be all corrosion resistant. Self-retracting lifelines must automatically limit free fall at a distance of 2 feet. Same with rip stitch and others, and minimum tensile load of 5,000 pounds. This is what I was saying earlier about ropes and straps and webbing and all that must be made of synthetic fibers. And anchorages used for attachment of personal fall arrest system shall be, and this is very important right here, basically a fancy way of saying that you must anchor your fall arrest system to something different than the fall restraint or the platform that you're currently working on. So if that fails from the anchor, then your fall arrest system will still be there because it will be attached to a different anchor. So, some more regulations on positioning devices. And it shall allow the worker to fall no farther than 2 feet and must be able to absorb at least twice the potential impact of the employee's load. So, very important things to keep in mind when you're working in any kind of industry where you have the potential for a fall. We have all this fancy equipment and good helmets and stuff. Another piece of important gear. You never know when somebody above you might drop something on you, or you might fall and swing into something. But the most important piece of safety equipment that you have in this industry is your brain. You must always, none of this stuff will work unless you use it correctly, you know how to use it. So you must always keep these things in mind, and the regulations are there for a reason. So use them, abide by them, and learn your equipment. Always be attached to a secure point. And whether you're moving around or whatever, you're moving in one anchor, it's why you may anchor into more than one place or something sometimes. Always be attached to at least one anchor at any given time. Be mindful of your surroundings and your team members. You want to pay attention to what's going on below you. When you're working with tools and equipment and materials up at a height, you never know when something might happen, it might fall. You got to be wary of everyone else's safety as well as your own. And be aware of your other team members. They may not be paying attention to you, and they may be above you and drop something on you and knock you out or knock you off the platform. So always be mindful of what's going on around you, and always be aware of your fall swing potential. I've mentioned that a couple of times, and that's if you fall and your fail restraint fails, you fall off the platform and you fall on your fall arrest. If you have your fall arrest clipped 6 feet over here to your right, then you're going to swing way over to your right. So you need to be aware of what you're going to swing into, and think about that when you place your fall arrest system and at the anchor, and be aware of, and make sure it's going to swing you into a safe area instead of into something sharp. Always be aware of structural integrity and of the work site. Pay attention to the integrity of your equipment and the anchor points and all that kind of stuff. You don't want to put your life on something that is deteriorating. Communication with your team members is very important. Always be aware of what they're doing and communicate, and for safety reasons. And weather awareness is very important too. Weather can really cause some serious issues in this type of work. And always plan and be aware of positioning and location for optimal safety and work ease. You don't want to, when you're putting your positioning land, you make sure you're right there in front of what you're working on. You don't want to have to lean over here and do this. It's just make your job easier. But many things to keep in mind. Always keep up to date with OSHA regulations and be aware of your equipment and safety protocols. But that's all on fall safety. Thank you all for coming out and viewing this presentation. Hope you have a good evening.
Woo! Good job, Nick.